I am harmony of the eternal sphere. Beloved ones, can nothing give rise to something? All the marvelous creative manifestations that are before your vision are the manifestation of God, the heart of the world. He who said, "In my Father's house are many mansions," clearly, out of the forte of his spiritual heart, reveals harmony. Harmony is a universal law, avoiding the collision of worlds, creating those manifestations of true divine love that enable those of diverse temperaments not only to understand each other, but to be in harmony with each other. For there is one law, and that law is the law of universal harmony. He who breaks it, he who violates it at any time, on the instant, is the recipient of the return current of his own negation, self-amplifying and often creating an echo of manifestation which peals forth as thunder, disturbing the atmosphere all around him and producing those manifestations which are never a part of anyone's real God center. I urge upon all students of the light the understanding of this law, that wherever possible they will do all in their power to keep the harmony. But, beloved ones, not as a strain, not as the creation of tension, whereby your own individual self strives to keep the harmony, but in a natural, gracious outpouring of the reality of heaven, which comes forth in the beautiful sense of the trailing arbutus, of the rose, the lily, the daffodil, and the flowers that everywhere manifest their splendor according to their season. Will you not then recognize the beauty inherent within this great law, that all frustrating experiences of darkness and despair may cease where the membership in the body of Christ is concerned? Let men understand the beauty of the Christic nature, the unfolding reality in the consciousness of him who said, "Consider the lilies, they toil not, neither do they spin. Yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these." Fascinating is the nature of God, but let it not become a mere temporary glamour, whereby your consciousness is enamored by outer facets of the great law, but let harmony be your inner key. Certainly, each individual who is given a keynote in the name of the brotherhood should recognize that harmony must become and is a central part of that keynote, for harmony is the central nature of God, and without harmony we cannot produce the miracle of worlds without end. All physical manifestation is produced by cosmic law, and when mankind, by wrong thought and feeling, impose that wrong thought and feeling upon nature in her own beautiful outpouring, they interfere with the whole process of cosmic law and produce those thorns and thistles, either in physical manifestation or in consciousness, which are destructive, vicious, and purely against the God intent. Why do I say purely? Because they have qualified purity with darkness. I want you to understand that whenever they use the law of control of matter, it is a manifestation at one point of purity, for they are using purity and truly misusing purity, and bringing forth those manifestations which are no part of the Godhead, no part of the inner soul or of the peace of the great law. I am harmony. And this day I desire, in the name of the living God and the Spirit of the great white brotherhood, to say to you that you are blessed indeed at this focus of the brotherhood to receive this gracious soul whom the brotherhood accepts under the name Tatiana Marie Prophet, this incoming soul that is intended to grace La Tourelle and the world as a beautiful manifestation of Capricorn mastery. For whereas the brotherhood does not necessarily approve all that is done in the name of astrology from the outer standpoint, there is an inner astrology of the spirit that is taught by the great magi and those who have mastered life, that understands the hierarchies, the spiritual hierarchies, whose qualification is far greater than the misqualification of astrological substance. We trust then that you will understand the need to keep your harmony in the presence of this soul, and also before God in the presence of one another, to bring forth those gracious manifestations of the Spirit that will make of you all a chaste consciousness in the eye of God, that without fear will bring forth the immaculate concept before mankind. Progress is the order of the day, beloved ones. It does not matter that in the past you may have erred in this or that. Beloved ones, give no power to your error, but only power to truth. For harmony is truth in manifestation, and harmony is in keeping with universal love, and will produce the world you hope for. Inharmony can never produce it, for throughout the centuries, mankind, through the manifestation of inharmony, have created countless wars, frictions and fractions of consciousness, which have literally dissolved the hopes of the world again and again. Now we say, in the name of universal harmony, let us create those manifestations of thought and feeling that are godlike in nature, extending new hope into the heart of the world, even in the midst of error. For does it not record, the people that sat in darkness saw a great light? Let this light shine in you then, and let this light that shines in you, that is the master of harmony, the true master of harmony, for it is the fulfillment of a divine edict, work in you to produce the miracles of God everywhere. It does not matter that error has held sway in your world in the past. In the name of heaven, in the name of common sense, beloved ones, what is enduring? Can evil endure? Can abuses of the law endure? Can inharmony endure? They are not immortal. These are actually a mortality that passes away, that cannot endure and shall not endure. Therefore, look to those things that are enduring. Your harmony is enduring. Your harmony is the perfection of life. Your harmony is to be found in the God within. Let it express without, and see what a miracle God will work. A little leaven may leaven the whole lump, but applied to spiritual gifts and graces, it can produce a literal heaven upon earth, And as others see your good works, whom shall they glorify, if not your Father which is in heaven? O beloved ones, harmony is in the ascendancy, in the brotherhood. It is the guiding influence of light. Do not thrust yourselves then into outer darkness, but into the inner light of the law, fulfilling its flaming manifestation right where you are at every moment. See and behold, witness for yourselves what harmony will do to your body cells. See what it will do to your mind, how the transmutative effort of your inner being can express without, producing God's miracles everywhere. I am harmony, and out of harmony will come a greater manifestation of universal law. For the universal law of life is itself harmony. And because you love harmony, you will also become children of harmony. For we are ready and willing to adopt all who will accept the papers of adoption into the force field of God's universal harmony. Once you are here, I must confess, I will relinquish you into the hands of your God perfection, your immortality streaming forth from the Godhead, the perfection of life, and heaven will draw you as by magnetic cords of love and light into its own domain, right where you are, because I am, because the I am in you has at last attained the majority of its dominion. In heaven's name, in the name of the love of the universal Christ, in the name of the perfection of God that stream forth from the Logos, I, harmony, have spoken. This is a domain of destiny, a domain of light, if you make it so. And only you can, for God already wills it so. It is to incorporeal goals that men must secure for themselves as an anchor in the heaven. For the vision and consciousness of man, quite naturally, beloved ones, graduates downward rather than upward, unless the soul be lifted by the wings of aspiration, which are called the wings of the morning. For the day of heaven is at hand, a time when men can, if they will, assign to themselves those cosmic priorities that enable them to witness the perfection of God as a rising, lightning-like sun coming from perfection onto the setting of perfection in the soul of the individual. There are those who have spoken of God, the Eternal Father, the Spirit, the Beloved, as one with them, yet their hearts have been far from Him. In reality, men have a tendency to derive mortal comfort from the ideas of God without understanding their need to become dedicated themselves to the fulfillment of the universal fiat in their own being and heart of hearts. For only, beloved ones, when the heart receives individually the bounty of God's goodness, only when the inn of man's being becomes an open place where the Lord may lay, can the individual himself behold the face of truth. For whereas it is said, no man can see the face of God and live as man still, it is important that he understand the similitude of the cosmic image, the perfection of the divine ideal, and the natural derivative of man's great structure from the eternal Father. Man, then, is truly born of the Spirit, and not of matter. And when Christ spake long ago to Nicodemus, saying, "Ye must be born again," it was to create the sense of tie and of union with the very soul and being of God. For the gem of perfection that lies within the domain of thyself is truly of God. Let men learn then to esteem the treasures of heaven, to come into that state of oneness of heart whereby they remain unmoved by the outer winds of human vibratory action or the dark and nebulous concepts of those spirits that are disobedient to the law and were also disobedient in the time of Noah, even before the flood. In the tragedies of the past, there has always been a matter of human involvement in those events whereby the individual ego, rather than be delivered unto God, was considered as the sole property of the individual. Let each monad know then and here that the Lord loveth a cheerful giver, that those who give themselves without reserve unto God for the purposes of the Eternal One will receive in return not only one talent, but a multitude of talents. For whereas in the parable of the talents it was limited to 10, the symbol does speak of the initiations without number that actually are the dissolvers of veils. For each initiation can, if it be properly accepted, become a means whereby a veil between man and God is dissolved, and the great light of God, the light of hope, can stream forth and through the veil. Individuals should understand how beautiful the record room here in the Grand Tetons is. Celestial, massive, and a haven for those who are devoted to the salvation of a planet and to a universe. Let all understand then that there is no desire on the part of deity to create and erect barriers between the soul of God, the great and deep mysteries of the universe, and man, but rather by laws that are set in motion by the individual, by the ego, by the human. These barriers are erected and sustained. For when you give of your momentums unto God, He is able to create those great universal creases in your nature that cannot be taken out by any. I refer to the momentums of cosmic law that retain a permanent press for mankind. It is very important that men see then their need to sustain and generate momentums of light that will be a guardian for them against the dregs of darkness, that when the dregs of darkness come into manifestation, they may be quickly seized upon by light, and light becomes the victor. All should recognize the great potential of their own divine nature. Is not the God in you, beloved ones, as great as in any other? Will you understand that the divine nature of one man is just as valuable as another, providing he gathers those cosmic momentums into his force field that can be amplified by the deity and made a gift of beauty and perfection to humanity? There is perfection in the heart of God, and that perfection is transferred to the heart of man. For whereas it has been said that the heart is desperately wicked, I also say today that the heart can become a castle of light, where beauty and virtue can be sustained. For man needs not to externalize ugliness. There has been for far too long in the world order too many strands of ugliness that have almost defied correction. Yet the deity is able, when working with the free will of man, to generate those momentums that will erase the tragic strands from the world order and bring in a new heaven and a new earth. But, beloved ones, this new heaven and new earth is not a thing far apart and away from you. It is nigh at hand, even at the door of your heart. For right where you are, there God is. Right where you stand, the potential for good stands. Right where you think, God thinks. Each then can understand, if he wills it so, that the measures of the past are not the measures of the future, or need not be. Yet the tendency would be to create in kind and after its kind. Therefore, whatever man has done, he has a tendency to continue to do. And the more that he does generate the force field of any momentum, the more that force field grows in intensity until it continues to draw into his world the exact patterns which he is creating by his daily actions. When you understand this, you see clearly, do you not, that you must change the course of your momentums and your actions into the constancy of the North Star, into the perfection of God that you desire. For he is unmoved by human events, but you are moved by them. Therefore it is you, blessed ones, who must understand the need to overcome darkness with light, to cast down those states of consciousness which are not of the Lord, of the light, of the strength of your heart. For you are bound one to another in the bonds of pure love, and only by the purity of love. When you understand this thoroughly, and when you act accordingly, then and only then does come into action the generation of a momentum of peace and joy, the momentums of the Holy Spirit. And when these momentums expand themselves, they will ultimately bring you a feast of light such as man has never dreamed of. I am Lanto of the light, of the royalty taught. I stand as one with God. I offer to him all my service and love, all the momentum I have ever generated in any life in the past, all that I am, all that I ever hope to be. Will you join me in your own offer unto God and your trust that out of the love of the source comes forth after its kind the fruit of divinity? And as you join yourselves to that which you desire to externalize, only that which is immortal, the immortal you, will remain, and that will forever stand. Through all the vibratory rates of an ascending eternity, as the bond of God's love, his hope, his momentums, his rising tide of the wings of the morning. I thank you.
the sky, and the dove of peace flutter. The magnanimousness of light extends itself from the east to the west. The lightning flash, the glimmer of hope, the caress of God upon substance, the raising of substance by spirit into light. Ours is the summoning of devotion. Ours is the summoning of hope. The caress of the light upon humanity invokes the best gift. Those who are afraid are poisoned as by the bite of an asp. The time has come for the sundering of old ties of darkness and deceit, and the cleaning of the corrupt house. The time has come when the chalice should be mended and fired by newness of life, and the glow that suffuses the sky is the glow of far-off worlds drawn nigh by the magnetism of valiant hearts, hearts of love that are devoted not to tragedies or comedies, but to the steadfast movement, the movement of the caress of God upon his creation. Moria summons. We summon the best gifts. We call to hearts, and there is a valiant trumpeting over land and sea. The air is filled with the glow of far-off worlds. Suffusing density, we call forth the glory, radiance of the trumpet that makes the certain sound, that those who hear may decide at last that the winds from Darjeeling are favorable to the intent of the Spirit. Callous have the hearts of men grown through the years. Now they crucify Christ without a thought. Mechanically, the thorns press toward the heart, and the arrows fly with hostility, vengeance, and the chaos of misunderstanding. The brotherhood, hierarchy, the teachers of light, those beyond the veil, send forth the summoning, and there ought not to be complacency. If the year is to yield her fruit, it must first be the fruit of individualized hearts. And as upon Mount Hermon, the fresh snows surround the fruit and the open flower that precedes the coming of the fruit, and the sky is lovely with hope, but below we see the dens of iniquity, the caves of darkened minds, and the old concepts even corroded in a more dire manner. And men say, God is, but understand not the fruit of self-manifestation, of self-magnification, of the comfort of the winds of the east and the mighty cross of light that enjoins man to divine union. The yoga of the Spirit is summoned. The dark ones continue to enter their council chambers. They draw nigh unto the activities of darkness, the drinking of blood, and the horror of their confusion, which precedes them into darkness and into those rites that bring forth only darkness.
The elect must stand tall in the saddle of victory. They must press their feet into the stirrups. They must understand that the best steeds require mastery, obedience, and they must gaze upon their physical bodies, upon the vehicles of the mind, upon the vehicles of the spirit, as the best summonings. Nature abhors a vacuum, yet men and women play whist and canasta while worlds fall apart. We understand the need for relaxation of tensions, but there are means provided in the domain of the Spirit for just these purposes. It is more a matter of exclusion with which we are concerned. Men who profess the name of God deny him in action, and we call forth and invoke selflessness where selfishness lives. We invoke the fruit of love and the passion of holy reason, that men may at last understand what the summoning is. The way to our abode is the way of peace and the way of mastery, the way of dominion and the way of the fastening of the spirit of man upon the divine steed. Be erect in spirit. Be forthright. Summon the best gifts and let them use your consciousness. For born out of world need comes also the banner of peace, the symbol of Maitreya, the symbol of the Far East, the symbol of the new Buddha. Men need and require the renaissance of consciousness, for consciousness needs to be actually immersed as in a washing machine, that it may mechanically be beaten upward and downward and sideways and flushed with the purity of the water of life. And then, as the garment dries in the sun, and the radiant spiritual fires do penetrate the substance thereof, the glow of happiness and the glow of strength and the glow of purpose will suffuse the consciousness, and individuals will understand the fruit of casting off outworn garments and replacing them by spiritual ones. Moria summons hearts. It is not enough to curiously examine, as with contempt, the wisdom of God. Men ought always to practice the glory of devotion and awe. For I tell you, if you could see, and I speak to those who do not, you would also stand with eyes of adoration and hope. The passion of expectancy and the understanding that the spirit of man can experience the wonder of the receipt of the Holy Spirit according to God's will. I believe that I have had a more than ordinary experience with God's will. I believe that I have laid heart, head, and hand upon the altar of devotion to the will of God. I believe that I have demonstrated by the power of cosmic example before you all the intent to infuse and to infire the soul of man with infinite desire and infinite capacity. Men say, I am limited. I assure you they are. Those who understand what buoyancy of the Spirit means will not hesitate to summon it, simply because old and outworn matrices have employed your consciousness does not mean that tomorrow may not be brighter. We also have experienced changes in our consciousness. We have experienced those changes of cosmic fascination, whereby we are fascinated by that which we have not seen as yet.
And we understand the need to summon this consciousness. Not that we desire to see you trample upon all that is traditional, but understand the process of sorting, whereby man is able to cast off those useless garments that have indeed held him bound in consciousness and being. Moria calls to the devas of the sacred fire of the will of God. I say, blaze and burn. Blaze and burn. Blaze and burn. Infuse the consciousness of those who are willing still to be disciples, or who at least will entertain the idea, the concept, the purity of performance. Open to them, then, the mighty continents of the air. As with the sound of a rushing mighty wind, sweep aside old debris and old timber, rotted and rotting, and replace before the vision of man those elements of gold and diamonds and purity which are the lovely will of God. Oh, how beautiful chastening is when understood as the pruning of the tree of life. Oh, how beautiful is the concept of producing change. For mankind can afford to do it and cannot afford not to do it, because it is they who, by reason of their acceptance, their unwitting acceptance in many cases, of the fiats of the dark ones, have need to renovate consciousness. And in the year 1972, when the warlords of the world are preparing many surprises, they think as a point of manipulation, but actually as a point of satanic delusion. We must invoke the best gifts and see, if possible, if we cannot alter some of their plans and provide for mankind a greater extension of life opportunities, whereby continuity can come to the race, and men will live, not perish. Let love then spread abroad over the canopy of the world. Let the portals of the temple beautiful be opened. Let love and light magnify and caress the soul so gently, so sweetly, yet so firmly. Men need to accept these fires. Oh yes, we have no wish to impose our wish or our desires upon those who do not understand our raison d'etre. How can they be expected to be understanders of cosmic purpose when they do not understand themselves? Tragic indeed is the refuges, the false refuges man has undertaken. He pulls himself as upon a rocky ledge and cries to the powder and ash of the world, fall upon us and cover our nakedness. When in reality, the all-seeing eye penetrates all things, and nothing can hide from the eyes of God. Do you suppose, for 1 minute, beloved one, that when we see, God does not? What a hallucination! That men suppose that God does not see or cannot penetrate the shard of the rock. There is no place to hide from the will of God. But men create pseudo-refuges, places where they think they can hide. They also think that they have eternal life in the searching of the Scriptures. And the Scriptures testify of the universal presence of the Lord Christ. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised. Hallowed be his holy name. I am. For out of the burning bush of the consciousness of being, men perceive upon the deserts of life the hope and portal of eternal emancipation. The doorway beautiful looms. The joy of far-off fires is kindled in those realms that are close at hand. Beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of those that preach the gospel of peace and bring the fruit of glad tidings everywhere. The brotherhood, in its great call and outreach, calls unto mankind today, for the needs are great. The year 1972 proclaimed of old, even before, even by the pyramid actions, has declared great opportunities are in the offing for man and upon the stages of life. These opportunities are transcendent, but they must be realized by men of spiritual vision, women of great perception, who shall offer their all upon the altar simply because they are today not bereft of awareness, but held within the hand of awareness and understanding. They are the elect of God because they have made themselves the elect of God. There is a principle of the holy will of God that comes into the mind of man and the being of man and opens many doors. Consciousness may, in many cases, have become involved in the grossest of darkened conditions. But once the light of God that never fails is invoked, as I have said, as God has first said, I am that I am. Therefore I say, let there be a trembling in the cup of life, and let there be a shaking, and let there be a manifestation, and let there be a realization, and let the tenderness of the great karmic law also be the tenderness that chastises humanity and jolts them into a jolly awareness of what is in store for the world if the confluence of karmic action now being gathered by the angels of record and the lords of karma is allowed to come full circle in this day and age. Life has spoken, and the words are truth, whether spoken by us or by yourselves. These words, then, ought themselves to sink down into your consciousness as the circle of cosmic awareness that blends with infinity. Out of the finite realm, the chalice of infinity appears. Man is able to receive it if he wills to accept it. And each one must, if he will, come to that point in his spiritual development where he can cheerfully drink of the cup of life. Men have hidden. They have turned their backs. They have become fruitless individuals simply because of a sense of vacuum, simply because they have not properly regarded themselves, simply because they have allowed themselves to grow callous, to grow hard, to be spiritually immature. Moria calls, O light of the eternal presence of the will of God, diamond shining mind of God, be thou raised in the consciousness and vision of all. Out of the fires of infinite perception, let there come into manifestation those valiant images which we invoke and evoke. The light of God that never fails speaks to every heart. I am that presence within you, and that presence within you is the will of God. Ah, yes, you say you have not heard these things before. Well, I tell you, tomorrow you may hear more. For out of the chambers of the Holy Spirit, out of the chambers of infinity, into the realm of finite manifestation, will come many images in 1972, which some will see and behold and understand, which others will say within the center of their being, we do not understand. We are confused. We are chaotic. I tell you, the ritual of clarification belongs unto you. Men who desire to create images of horror or destruction will do so. Let them think what they will. They will reap the fruit of what they think. Let them understand, then, that by the valiant aura of cosmic obedience, men of the Spirit shall come at last to that domain of cosmic regeneration that wrought those changes in human hearts, minds, and lives, which is the fruit of following in the regeneration of the Christ consciousness. Unless men do this, the conditions in the world may worsen. If they do it, conditions may grow infinitely better for mankind en masse. You do not understand how that by reason of the wrong action of Balaam, the son of Beor, the dumb ass, speaking with a man's voice, beheld the face of the angel when the man did not. Simply to say that you yourself do not behold truth does not exonerate you from your cosmic responsibility for the fount of life that beats your living heart. I am El Morya of the Zend. I tell you out of the flame, the light of cosmic truth now comes from behind the veil, and I summon the flame of God's will to actually manifest in the center of your heart as the fire of hope that will start the dream of God all over again. From the beginning we have spoken, and the tragedy is that through the ages many have not listened. They have remained wedded to their own dilapidated concepts, and they do not understand how the rite of purification may become involved even in the small ritual of brushing your teeth. I want you to understand that purification that begins without is also communicated to that which is within. Through the ritual, the simple ritual of individual cleansing of the chalice of your physical bodies, of the openings of the mind and spirit, you will find at last that even the fires of purification that are generated in the soul by the God-magnificent flame of Christ's accomplishment brings to each and every one of you the blessing of purification. And by the blessing of purification, the fruit of the Spirit will become known unto you, and you will understand at last those hidden things of the Spirit which we call qualification. The rite of qualification is a blessed rite, for it brings those individuals who otherwise would remain as tortoises upon the path to that state of conscious awareness whereby at last they become hares, proceeding quite rapidly toward the goal, so that many who are first shall be last, and many who are last shall be first. Take heed, beloved ones, that no man take thy crown, for behold, the crown chakra of cosmic regeneration within the physical body itself is a focus that can enable the consciousness of each individual to arise at last into that domain through the gentle trap door located above the spinal column, whereby the individual may clean escape into that beautiful chalice of consciousness that is even above the place of the skull, Golgotha, so that man may arise at last up the spinal ladder of life to the place where the wings of the Spirit will buoy up the mind and the fires of regeneration become a concentrated effort to see that man is no longer blind, but the bearer of the fruit of the Spirit to all men upon the planetary body. And I say to you tonight, you cannot possibly know the fullness of that which I speak. But as the hours, the moments fly, as time passes, and you begin the beautiful ritual of externalization of the fruit of the Spirit, you will come to that place at last in your cosmic development where you will begin to understand by your own valiant experiences just how beautiful are the gifts of the Spirit and those transcendent jewels of Christ's accomplishment and Christ's discrimination that enable each individual to become at last the fullness of all that God intended in the beginning before the world was. Morya speaks. Let the stupid ones return to the earth. As worms they shall crawl back into the ground. As worms they shall remain embedded in the earth. As worms they shall turn this way and that way. But let those who understand chrysalis understand how even in the cocoon of darkness, light can stretch the fabric of its identical patterns with the God intent to that magnificent cosmic degree where the butterfly is formed and rises out of the cocoon of mortal ignorance into the sky of God's hope, where the rays of the transcendent sun immortalize the consciousness into the eternal fires of divine perception. I am El Morya of the Zend. As the Magian of the cosmic order, I say, let the elect seek God. We do not ask that men be summoned to our personal patterns. We are concerned with the fabric of the generative will and the regenerative strength which God himself has declared as the Urim and Thummim of manifestation. For the positive and negative poles produce the odic flame. And out of the odic flame come manifestations of the Spirit. And out of this comes forth the fires of hope. Mankind, why have you tarried so long? Why have you remained wedded to your cups of concupiscence? Why has the mortal sense engulfed you? Why have you allowed yourselves to be cast down? Suppose you for a moment that divinity ceases to exist because you do? Do you not understand the gentleness of hope and yet its solemn strength? That is a cable of steel momentum, white fire momentum, generated and standing against the deeds of men that are evil. Yea, fruit of the tree of life is before you. And out of our temple of goodwill here in Darjeeling, we send the best hopes into the world. And the best hopes are the clean escape of men from their multifaceted fractionings of consciousness. They're almost vicious lies against the eternal truth. These shall evaporate. They shall vanish as a vial of wrath and be no more. As a vapor upon the window of life, they shall cease to exist. This heaven promises. But let them continue for a while. There is always hope that men at last will despise their position of weakness and understand that their strength is to be found in the will of God. Tragic it is that simply just behind the veil, the will of God appears in the blue sky. The winds that echo forth from Darjeeling are the winds that raise the spirit of man to soar into the blue sky of heaven's will and understand at last the beauty of that hope, which is the best images conjured up by the lofty spirit of the indwelling Christ. O pontifical action of the infinite light of hierarchy. O beautiful drops of life coming down with thy golden glow into the chalice of the world order thou droppest. Drop by drop, flooding forth new life unto man. Golden oil of hope and illumination, to thee is our dedication. And the results are to be found in the inward spirit of man. Ah, yes. We can speak with a whisper and sibilate into action the manifestation of the will of God. We journey still in consciousness into the minds and hearts of the best devotee, not from a point of personal or egoistic satisfaction do we come, but from cosmic offices, the offices of hierarchy. The sweetness of our hopes for you. For out of the frankincense of the Spirit there is inflamed upon the altar of life newness of hope that at the portals of the year bring forth the great thread of contact. And the thread of contact is for those who believe. The unbelievers dwell in their own private chambers of darkness. We hope that one day the light will shine there, and they will come out of the cave of darkness into the beauty and strength of the shining sun. But man is literally drenched with hope, and sometimes does not respond. The responses of the Spirit are pleasing unto God, for they indicate the casting upon the cave of the pictures of renewed hope. As in the fount of God, through Plato, through all of the philosophers of the ages, through all of the wise men who have ever lived upon the planetary body, through the panoply of ascended master consciousness, through the strategies and strata of cosmic marble, the perfectionment of God that is ingrained as an engram within the consciousness. Moria stretches forth the banner of the world. it has been decided that we would give this day, by karmic grace, a spiritual experience of great depth. Will you take my hand in thought and come with me apart from ordinary experience realms into the world of cosmic dreams, where we can create an experience of peace in what we shall term the pavilion of peace. By His grace, there is created by the Devas and the builders of form and great cosmic beings a pavilion of white alabaster, through which shines the light never seen on land or sea, the light of 10,000 spiritual suns, the light of the Eternal One. Through the walls of our alabaster pavilion of peace, there gleam now this radiance. There are 4 sides to our pavilion, and 3 magnificent domes on each side, 2 below and 1 above, forming a triad in memory of the threefold nature of man and of God. The gates of the pavilion are open, and 6 mighty seraphim stand at each gate to lead you upward to the temple of peace. The mighty organ, which we call the organ of peace, is radiating out that cosmic sound, which is soundless, but which can rise to crescendos of peace. And thus we see the difference between activity and greater activity. For peace is not a vibration of nothing, of an absence of action, but a higher form of the radiation of God, to be found in part at the eye of a hurricane or a strong wind. The peaceful calm of the center of cosmic action. For it is as though all of the frozen snows of the north and the crystal images of huge blocks of ice and snow, of glaciers, all sparkling as in a midnight sun. For man's mind and consciousness is yet as at midnight, and yet the sun of heaven still shines. Our diamond blue-white radiance surrounding the pavilion of peace gleams out as a comet in the sky of consciousness. The vibration of peace
has the potential, the vast and wondrous potential of increasing its vibratory action. And do you know that there is a link between happiness and the increase of the vibration of peace? For peace is a part of the divine nature. It is a quality of the living God. All substance belongs unto God. Frozen light or frozen energy may become fluidic with ease and flow and be transmitted and form and reform images and brilliant concepts of the peace of the heart, as the peace of the heart is brought unto all. Will you enter now with me the gates of the temple of peace and hear the sweet bells of heaven that ring out melodic joy that peace can prevail? 7 snow-white doves are carrying a banner in their bills, and they flutter at the gateway as you enter. And the banner, in letters of gold, old English gold, fluttering in a soft, gentle wind, read, peace. For there is no other vibratory action can come into our temple save peace. And yet the scene is not vacant. For there is a light and a mystical joy in the air of this pavilion of peace. Now we see suddenly the 13th dome, an inner spire rising, and a beautiful brick mosaic formed within it, and there in gold stamped within a Maltese cross of perfect balance, the word peace. It is as though the very physical heart wanted momentarily to pause and drink in the scene of peace. For 7 rays come down from the center of the dome, and these are the rays of the Holy Spirit. White at the point of blending, the gentlest of pastel hues is to be seen upon the floor, where the reflected rays gently position themselves as though they were 7 votive flames from the altar of God's heart. Serenity, bubbling as a gentle fountain from the heart, speaks of the quietude of God's peace. This is a vital peace, a peace surrounded with feelings of light and air and motion and creativity. For born out of the heart of God comes the awareness of all life as a part of the Holy Spirit. God wills it so. And as he said, "Let there be light," so now we hear the eternal fiat, "Let there be peace." And it is so. I am the Elohim of peace. I radiate out into the world domain the vibratory action of infinite peace.
a consuming fire to those who radiate out the awful vibratory action of hatred, war, and destruction, and the influences of the carnal mind, but a fire of hope, a shining diadem of our love to all who see the beauty of our temple. We offer to each of you a gift this day, a miniature replica of the Temple of Peace, a symbol of your journey, which we place in a golden acorn. Selah! It is done. To each soul, let there be an encapsulated golden acorn. Within that acorn, reduced to microscopic size and placed within the ventricle of the heart, so as not to interfere in any way with the flow of the life force, do we place the gift, the focus of the Elohim of peace, my focus, thy focus, God's focus, a universal focus. It belongs to the world, to the universe. It is a part of creativity, of the fiat of creation. And I heard a voice as of thunder or of many waters, flowing and saying, let there be joy, for the kingdoms of God created always for the joy and blessing of mankind have descended in greater portion into the world consciousness. Every little child, every feeble individual preparing now to make the change called death may draw upon the focus of peace and understanding. Peace and grace, peace and hope, peace and love, a circling bond within thy heart. In memory of thy journey this day into the pavilion of the Elohim of peace, I give this token gift, a symbol we hope to create in those who may hear our words at later times, a symbol whose vibratory action shall consume the lust for war and human vanity in all who will open their hearts to understand how important a role peace plays in the world community. For each of all mankind's wars, each family argument, each struggle of one soul pitted against another soul, has created a consumption of their energy, of the energy of nations, of the energy of peoples, that if all of this energy were pooled together in a great tower of constructivism, the world could be made up of builders working in the realm of spirit as well as matter. And the world could become a place where the toils, the labors of men would create a arbor in which we would plant a tree, the tree of life, and the tree could grow, mature, and its leaves be for the healing of the nations. Those who plant could be those who would eat the fruit of that tree. And the culture of God and of the angels and of unknown worlds
would once again become a part of the family of nations, gathering nations into a sense of excellence, gathering individuals into a sense of excellence, teaching to all those divine and spiritual arts by which the physical world of man today has become endowed and received in part a measure of scientific lore and that knowledge that has enabled men to rest from many of their heavier labors and to enjoy many blessings of a material nature. But now I tell you a mystery. There are untapped powers in the Odic light, in the cosmic forces. Try 'em! Olim! Thumim! The breastplate of God, the vibratory action of the Odic force, has created cataclysm and turbulence great enough to sink continents beneath the waves, to catapult families and individuals and many into the pits of destruction because their deeds were evil. May I then, in the name of the living God, say unto this world, all thy strength is in thy peace, thy love, and thy effort for the building of the heavenly civilization. All thy danger is to be found in the array of human might and human vanity in the world, which for thousands of years has continued to tear from the mother of the world's own heart her children and thwart the eternal, God-blessed, magnificent plan which requires the summoning of every son and every daughter to the oneness of the Spirit and the activity of eternal peace. Peace is not a cessation of motion. Peace is a quality whose vibratory action and crown is so high, whose intense and fervent cosmic emotion is the generation of such magnificent creative frequencies as to be seldom visualized by a world, particularly when that world has gone mad with the chaos of its senseless motions of destruction. Our peace is a mantle flame from the heart of the living God. And every heart of every man, and every heart of every little child, and every heart has within it a votive flame by which it too is able to intensify its vibrational attunement with the power I bring to you this day in the pavilion of peace. Remember these gifts. If you were to journey today to a far-off land and meet a great ruler, a Maharaja, a king, one who could give you the greatest of gifts, would you not carry this gift to your trophy chest, to the place where you dwell, and place it in a position of honor? Would you not speak of it to all that you would meet?
especially those who were wise enough to understand it? Would you not proudly, all the days of thy life, and in the eternal sense forever, appreciate this gift? I hope that you will appreciate that gift which I have given you, not as a trivial or ephemeral gift of a man, but of one who has seen the marvelous spindles of gold in the record rooms of the Grand Tetons, one who has also seen the mighty writings in Akasha, which tell of ages so long ago that even the evolutions of this world in the earliest days could not compare with that of which I speak. I have seen them. I have read them. I have understood them. I have assimilated them. They are a part of the I Am presence. Every Elohim, when he is given the crown of the Elohim, is also compelled by cosmic grace and cosmic law to read these records. I tell you of a truth. The gift I give you today is a point of contact with universal peace. If you will, it can summon within you at will the great cosmic genie, the figure form, the symbolic angel of your own individualized presence, who will on the instant bring you into the realm of peace. And so I shall tell you of the power of this talisman, which I place within those of you who will accept it. I will never impose it upon any. If you have once accepted it, however, I should tell you now, it becomes anchored there forever. And all you have to do, when all around you is turbulent, when you are in distress, and when you are in confusion, is to visualize in miniature the pavilion of peace, and call unto me and unto your individualized God presence, and say, I need thee every hour, O Elohim of peace, and beloved mighty I Am presence. Shew forth thy light. And with these words, shew forth thy light, I will come again and create the vibratory action of my peace. In the name of the Prince of Peace, I say, peace be unto you.